In Warhammer, there are a lot of things one can learn, like how to assemble and magnetize miniatures, how to paint miniatures, and how to build an army. This hobby is unique because not only do you learn various skills as the years go on, but we also learn from each other. Since Warhammer is one of those hobbies where most, if not all of us, are willing to share our knowledge with each other instead of just locking it away. We all want everyone interested in Warhammer to succeed, so it's important that we all pass on our knowledge to the next generation of hobbyists. Since I've been in Warhammer for 6 years now, I figured it's time to share what I've learned so you don't make some of the same mistakes I did. But welcome back everyone, it's me the Warhammer complaining guy, Revan/Handy, destroyer of wallets and maker of terrible financial decisions. So reflecting on these 6 years of Warhammer, I sat down and came up with 20 things I've learned that I think are important no matter what stage of Warhammer you're at, be it a beginner or a veteran miniature hoarder. Also, don't worry, the annual pile of shame video will be after this one. The first, most obvious one is that there's other Warhammer games besides 40k. Some may think I started with 40k, but I actually started with Titanicus, if you ignore the full-sized Warlord Titan. While 40k is GW's flagship, there's also Sigmar, Kill Team, Middle-earth, Necromunda, Horus Heresy, Imperialis, Old World, and many more that I might have forgotten about, like GW does. Some of these games are way cheaper than 40k by a mile, and honestly the miniature designs are way cooler than 40k sometimes. Like the new Saturnine Dreadnought, oh boy, I can already hear my wallet screaming. If miniatures are not your thing, there's also the books and video games. For video games, you got Space Marine 2, Total Warhammer 3, Mechanicus, Bolt Gun, Dawn of War 2, and many other Warhammer games. Follow the rule of cool. The rule of cool means buy the army or units you think look cool. That's how I ended up with a Warlord Titan and 4 armies. You should always buy what you think looks cool, because then you'll be more motivated to paint it, along with it also being something you'll stare at on a display shelf daily. This is probably one of the most important tips, since I would rather collect what I think looks cool than what's meta, since I sometimes play tabletop. I mean, look at Centurion Man Paul, he's a great example of this. Because, let's be honest, you're not going to buy this many Centurions unless you really think they're cool. So always buy what you think looks cool, because then you'll honestly have a lot more fun. Warhammer is expensive. With each year that passes, Warhammer is getting more expensive. Warhammer is the most expensive of all the tabletop war games, due to GW constantly increasing the prices and just being greedy in general. Some armies are also more expensive than others because GW has standardized the pricing for all their minis. Armies like Custodes will always be cheaper than Space Marines, and AdMech will usually always be the most expensive because GW. Then there's plastic versus resin. GW's resin minis will always be more expensive than their plastic counterparts, which is honestly bullshit for the quality. If you really want to make Warhammer cheaper, 3D printing and used minis are always an option. Always have a plan. Having a plan for what minis you're going to buy reduces the amount of stress on your wallet and helps you avoid burnout. For instance, if you're building a 2,000 point army, just buying random minis might not be a great idea, since you had no plan for your army structure and you might not like certain units. Planning out painting projects also helps to reduce burnout, because if you're painting things you don't want to paint all in one go like chaff, and not painting the minis you like in between, then painting will get boring and you won't have fun. Be patient and avoid going f it we ball. Being patient and not going f it we ball like I have multiple times is a great way to not spend a lot of money in a short period of time. Patience is key in Warhammer, especially if you're trying to save money, because for codex drops in the holidays, new value boxes get released, which is a great way to build an army and also save money at the same time. Individual units from these boxes will also eventually get a solo release outside the large box, even if it's 2 months later. This is how you avoid going f it we ball and buying way more than you honestly should. Don't build multiple armies at the same time. Building multiple armies at the same time is a recipe for disaster, because then it's going to be even more expensive in a shorter time span, and you also might neglect one army and it might not get painted for years or at all. I'm guilty of this because when I got the Indomitus box, I was gonna have a Necron, Space Marine, and Knights army all at once at the same time. And then 1 year later, I sold all the Necrons because I was honestly never gonna get to them. While it's nice to have multiple armies, building and painting too many armies at the same time is a bad idea. So get one army to at least 80% completion, and then maybe think about getting another one. A lot of minis can be magnetized. While GW is becoming more magnet friendly with the newer kits, it wasn't always like that. You usually had to figure it out yourself, which is what I did for all my Imperial Knights, some of my Space Marines, and my Custodes. GW intentionally gives you way more options than you'll ever use for one model, so they want you to spend more money. But not for me. I suffer because I want to get my money's worth out of the plastic crack I just bought. If you want to magnetize your minis, YouTube is a great resource for magnetization guides, like if you want to magnetize your Imperial Knights. I made a guide for pretty much every Imperial Knight in existence, and the new one is just a Questoris Knight, so the guide is still relevant. But a lot of minis can be magnetized, it's all just a matter of how creative you are. Some minis or armies are not made equal. This is something I'm sure everyone notices, how every reveal stream, Space Marines will always get a participation cake. That's because they keep the lights on no matter how badly you want more than one new miniature for your army, even though it's been an entire edition since the last one and the new one isn't even that good. This is also partially true in terms of designs between GW's other games. While 40k may be stagnating in terms of designs, the other games frequently get banger after banger. This is honestly the reason I buy minis from other armies or games that I think look cool, because it's more interesting than the generic stuff getting released in 40k right now. You can hobby anywhere if you're creative enough. This one is a throwback to when I first started Warhammer. Before I had my desk, which I use for all my hobby needs, I used to assemble my miniatures on a small pop-up table in the garage and painted them on the kitchen table. You can even hobby on a TV dinner tray. It's what Ikbar did for a little bit. Hell, when I was in college many years ago, I even saw someone assembling Gunpla in the library. You can really hobby anywhere, even with a small amount of space. You just gotta think outside of the constraints of a hobby desk. You don't need the most expensive hobby supplies to hobby. This is for people that think all your brushes need to be sable, or you need $80 sprue cutters, or you need to buy a wet palette. None of these are really necessary, they're just luxuries. My sprue cutters are railroad track cutters, and I've had them for 4 years and I still use them for Warhammer and track cutting. For my paint brushes, I only have 2 sable brushes used for specific tasks, and my other brushes are just synthetics I bought for $1 to $4 each. Then my wet palette is just an old Tupperware, paper towel, and non-wax baking paper. The most expensive thing I really use is Tamiya Extra Thin, but that's worth every penny. So I think it's that time again. That's right, it's time for some audience interaction to help boost it to the almighty YouTube algorithm. So if you're enjoying this video so far, please like and subscribe because it only helps this elaborate shitpost of a channel grow. And maybe join my Discord server too if you care about that. But let me know in the comments down below, what are some tips you would give to your past self or anyone that's interested in Warhammer? Okay, so the next one is pretty obvious. 2 thin coats, or just thin your paints. I don't think I need to say much about this since it's been beaten to death at this point. Thin your paints if you want your minis to look nice. The easiest and most consistent way to do this is use a medicine dropper like this and add 1 drop at a time to your wet palette. Also, it's worth mentioning that every paint acts differently, so getting the correct ratio of paint to water might take some practice. Wear a glove when painting. If you don't have a painting handle and hold the mini with your bare hands, there's no barrier between the thin paint layers and the oils your skin secretes. These oils will rub the paint off of your mini, or even worse if it's metallics, get metallic flakes in places you don't want them to be when you put your finger on a different part of the mini. A glove is not only a barrier, it's also a great way to test the paints you thin to see if the consistency is right before you put paint to plastic. It also makes it easier to get better angles on the mini and makes it not so unwieldy. So wear a glove if you don't want to ruin your paint job. You can make a wash using any paint. Pretty much any paint can be used to make a wash. Washes are just extremely thin down paints. If you want to make a wash, use water or paint medium. Some examples are the Smoke on Asmodai, these bases right here, and the Ram Skull. You can also use contrast paints as washes. I do this regularly now, like on my Custodes cloaks, the Skaven's clothes, and Skeletor. Just make sure you use darker colors than your base color for this. Experiment with colors from different brands. GW isn't the only paint brand out there, and frankly, some of their colors are not that great. Especially their shades of white, yellow acrylics, metallics, and some of their lighter flesh tones. Usually these paints are chalky and don't have great coverage, along with their metallics having chunky metallic flakes. Other paint brands like 2 Thin Coats, Vallejo, Pro Acryl, and even some random startups have better paints than the ones GW sells to you, and they're also sometimes even cheaper. GW does have some great paints in their range, but they're not the only option. I use Vallejo Metal Color Air for metallics and a mix of two thin coats and some GW paints for most of my painting projects. It's all honestly a matter of preference, so find the paints that you like. Come up with your own painting style. Copying the box art means you won't really learn much, and the way GW paints the box art is way more effort than it's worth. While it's important to learn the basics from GW, there are multiple painting styles that you may or may not like. So look at minis on social media and experiment with different painting styles, and if you like it, you can then put your own spin on it to make your own style. But remember, these are your minis, so everyone has their own subjective preferences. Don't paint a lot in one go. Painting 30 plus minis in one sitting is a great way to burn yourself out and not want to pick up the brush for a long time, because some of us can't settle for less when we want everything we paint to look great. Instead, break up that large chunk of minis into an individual unit, all the while alternating what you paint so it's fun and not a slog. My recommendation is to alternate between squads, HQs, and vehicles, so you'll have more fun and at the same time you won't burn out. Varnish your minis. That paint job you spend hours painting can easily be rubbed off since we paint in thin layers, and since Warhammer is a tabletop game and these are game pieces, the oils from your hand and now friction from picking up and moving the miniatures around the board will cause the paint to wear off. This is really noticeable on sharp corners or other areas you might grab it from. Varnish is just another barrier to protect your beautifully painted miniatures. You also don't need spray varnish, that can frost over and ruin hours of work. There are good brush-on varnishes out there like Vallejo and Ultramat, you just might have to thin some of them down. Get a transport and display case. If you're going to transport your minis or show them off at home, you need a transport case and a display case. If you get a foam transport case, this is why varnishing your minis is important. And this would also be the spot I would place a mag case sponsorship. If I had one! You want your minis to be relatively safe when you go to play a game, and a cardboard box is a disaster waiting to happen. Believe me, I know from experience. A transport case is also great if you need to transport an army or multiple armies across country multiple times on short notice. Then a display case is a good way to show off your collection, while also reducing the amount of dusting you might have to do if they were out in the open, and also just having the daily tism stare at your collection. If you want a display case, any IKEA display case or its Amazon equivalent works just fine. If you're looking for something, it's probably on YouTube. YouTube is a wonderful place to find lore, assembly and painting guides, and just Warhammer content in general. Want to learn the lore of your favorite faction? There's a video for that. Want to learn how to play Warhammer? Well, there's a video for that. Want to learn how to be a better painter? You guessed it, there's a video for that. Or how about magnetizing an entire box of Space Marines even though it's not worth it, but the gremlin inside of you says do it anyways because this hobby is expensive and you want to get your money's worth out of the plastic crack you just bought. But yeah, YouTube is great. Subscribe. Then finally, have fun. Remember, Warhammer is a hobby, and hobbies are meant to be fun. A lot of things I mentioned earlier were things that when done wrong made the hobby not fun for me. Be it ruining a paint job because I didn't wear a glove, buying too many miniatures and spending a lot of money I probably shouldn't have because I didn't have a plan, or I painted way too many minis at the same time instead of alternating projects and now I'm burned out. I just want to have fun with my hobby, and I also want everyone else to have fun, because there's honestly no other hobby community out there like Warhammer where everyone is so friendly, welcoming, and willing to help everyone out with even the most minor of issues. So just remember to always have fun. Anyways, thanks for watching, and a huge thank you to the GIGAist of the Chads right here, the channel members and Twitch subscribers. So if you too want to be a Giga Chad and help fund these stupid ventures, consider becoming a member of either for access to the member section of the Discord and other perks I still need to decide on. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe, but I have to go make more terrible financial decisions, so I'll see you all in the next video, and remember, when you play Warhammer, being poor is a choice.